So let's get into the care of flytraps and other carnivorous plants and what I think these kits do right and wrong. This is continuing off the short that I made, but you don't need to have seen that. It'll just provide some extra context about what led me to make this video. Venus flytraps and pitcher plants are native to swamps and bogs. Anytime I'm trying to wade through the mountain of good information and crap about the care of a plant species, that's the first thing I want to know. You can never go wrong by trying to replicate a plant's natural habitat. The peat moss that these kits come with is great. It replicates that natural bog medium perfectly, and when used over a bed of well-draining indoor potting mix, it's great at preventing both over and underwatering, which you'll come to understand in a moment is very important. Another win for these kits is that they make sure to tell you not to use tap water. Tap water's full of dissolved minerals in many places and even metals, and they're not good for these plants' roots. Use rainwater or distilled water. But the real topic of debate, the topic of every article and post you'll see where people are dogging on the people who make these kits, is the terrarium. Everybody on the internet says they're bad for these plants. All the sellers say they're good. Why? Well, the first thing to understand is that the humidity is a red herring, right? The reason that the plants that I had in the terrarium did better than the plants that I had outside the terrarium is actually about the soil. Remember, these plants grow in swamps. They need their medium to remain damp. If their medium is going to constantly dry out, they're going to die. The terrarium is going to help keep that soil from drying out too quickly. It gives you more leeway in between watering sessions. These swamp plants are also not going to die from the humidity in a terrarium alone. That all being said, there are downsides to keeping any plant in a terrarium. There's a reason that out of the over 100 different species of plants that I grow, not one do I keep in a terrarium. Problem number one, the medium for these plants is a delicate balancing act. You want their soil to stay damp, but not soggy and not waterlogged. That'll cause their corms to rot and it'll kill the plant. In a traditional glass terrarium with zero drainage, you're one overwatering away from disaster. If you water the plants properly, that soil will stay at the correct dampness level for a lot longer. But if you overwater them, you've lost the advantage you get from this good draining soil mix because the water has nowhere to drain. Problem number two is airflow, and as an extension to that, fungus. Still air is not good for most plants, and if you go back through the hundreds of hours of plant-related content on this channel, you'll find that probably a third of it has something to do with aeration or airflow or something to that effect, because it's really, really important. Without good airflow, you're going to be dealing with fungi constantly like I was during this experiment. Poor airflow leads to fungal conditions like root rot and fusarium, and these plants are highly sensitive to copper, taking one of our best tools for dealing with fungus off the table. So if you grow in a terrarium, you either need to constantly be countering these fungi, or you need to keep opening and closing the lid to circulate air, which sort of defeats the purpose of the terrarium in the first place. So here's my final word about carnivorous plants in terrariums before I get into what these instructions missed and how I would have done it better. The terrarium is not the world-ending disaster for carnivorous plants that a lot of people online are trying to make it out to be. It's simply not. You can grow totally healthy carnivorous plants in a terrarium. I should know, I just did it. But it's also not the best way to go about it. The better solution here is to keep your plants in pots with good drainage holes and keep those pots in a tray with a couple centimeters of water at the bottom. Let the soil naturally wick the water up to the plant like it would in a bog. This allows the medium to maintain the proper dampness even if you miss a watering here and there, while also not restricting the airflow. You should make sure that your pot is at least 4 or 5 inches tall for this, and not one of those tiny little micro pots that some of these kits come with, or you just end up keeping the plant's corm in the water, and that's not good either. Now, while I have spent most of my time this far defending the makers of these kits and kind of bashing on the internet experts who criticize them, I do have to say that I totally agree with them that these instructions these kits come with suck. I noticed a lot of really important care instructions that are either quickly glossed over or completely ignored by these, and I wanted to go over some of them in case you're trying to grow a fly trap. And I also want to show you how I would do these instructions better, because I'm going to take these fly traps and donate them to some kids when I'm done, and I'm going to make them personalized care instructions for their plants and show you how I would do it. The number one thing that is so important that I do not see mentioned anywhere in these instructions: these plants are deciduous. They need a dormancy period, or at least fly traps and the Sarracenia do. The Napenthes are old world pitcher plants or evergreen, so if you have those, you can ignore this part. But these plants, if kept indoors or in a tropical climate, are going to need a 3 or 4 month period with reduced light and cool temperatures from November to about February or March. You can keep them in a refrigerator set to about 50 degrees during this time if you don't have any other options. Number 2, no traditional fertilization, organic or otherwise, it doesn't matter. There's a reason that these things evolved to eat bugs. The peat bogs and pine bogs that they come from are very nutrient poor, highly acidic environments. And as a result, they evolved root systems that kind of suck. They're very, very sensitive. There are some sprays that you can get that are good for carnivorous plants, but other than that, they mostly get their nutrients from eating bugs. So when they have traps, feed them. Last but not least, where they go, indoor, outdoor, where should you keep them? They do like a lot of light. But again, despite what people online seem to think, you don't actually need to huck them into the surface of the sun 21 hours a day. 10, 12 hours a day in a sunny window or under a medium-powered grow light will give you a happy plant. You can keep them outside, but these are really sensitive plants, and I don't recommend it unless you live in something like their native climate, which, at least for the Venus Flytrap, is about a 100-mile radius around Wilmington, North Carolina. It creates way too many uncontrolled variables. They're also naturally very low to the ground, and that should tell you that they don't need full high-intensity sunlight. Plants that need that tend to grow tall, so they can get above the other plants that block the sun. These plants don't. They're low slung, they stay along the ground. Dappled or medium intensity light is fine. You also don't want to dry them out, and too intense of sunlight will do that. The last thing I wanted to cover: how would I do this better, and maybe what are some of the criticisms of these systems that I think are kind of unfair, right? Now, first, I think that carnivorous plants, they really put me in mind of orchids. When I was a kid, they used to have those Just Add Ice orchids that they would advertise everywhere. And both carnivorous plants and orchids are a little bit higher on the difficulty scale of plants to care for. So I do think that that needs to be acknowledged and, maybe advertised a little bit better. And if you're trying to get your kids into botany through carnivorous plants, that's a cool way to do it. They're plants that I could see kids getting engaged with, but you may need to kind of look over your shoulder. At the same time, I think people are being way too critical of these instructions, right? And at some point you have to say to people, well, yeah, you are going to need to take a little bit of your own responsibility and do a little bit of research on how to care for these plants if that's something that you want to get into. You cannot count on one piece of paper that you got in a box to tell you everything that you're ever going to need to know. The last thing that I would do is kind of try and punch up the care instructions and make them a little more interesting for kids, and maybe get the kids to sort of bond with the plants that way. And with that thought in mind, after you like and subscribe, I'm going to leave you for 30 seconds on a video of the notes that I wrote for the kids that I'm donating these plants to kind of give you an idea of what I mean by that and how I would have written the care instructions for these plants if I were the one who made these kits. Maybe someday down the road, the people who do make these kits will see that idea and feel free to take anything that I have mentioned here and use it as your own. No credit needed to me. I'm more than happy to help. And please get yourself a better camera, because the pictures that you had in those instructions, man, they were bad. I could not make heads or tails of what I was looking at. You guys have a great night. Again, like I said, like and subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you soon. The sun is setting on me, and soon you're not going to be able to see me, so signing off.